Hi, I'm Todd Aaron Smith, and I am so glad you're here. Today I'm going to make a sketch that you can make too. I'll show you some things to keep in mind while drawing, but mostly I'll show you that you are an artist and that you can sketch anything. There is no limit, and you can do this. So today I'm going to make a scene of railroad tracks that go off in the distance. I'll put some trees and hills and even a mountain in the background. Whether you are drawing along with me or just watching, you'll see that there is nothing in this sketch that you can't do yourself. Your friends and family will be amazed when they see it. So I'm going to first start with finding my horizon line, and that is where the ground meets the sky. I want to find a vanishing point here, and I'm going to make some lines that go off to that vanishing point. I've made my horizon line about 3/4 of the way down the page, I guess. And I'm just bringing lines together to meet that horizon line. Of course, railroad tracks are parallel, and I want to, as they go off in the distance towards the horizon, they look like they're getting closer and closer together. The idea here is that I'm trying to create perspective in this sketch. I want to think about it kind of in 3D. So you have some things that are a lot closer to you as you're looking at the picture, and you have some things that are much further away that go all the way to the horizon line. And that's the idea behind this. I want to create a dynamic composition as best I can. I want to have some movement in the picture and some things right up close to us that go off in the distance. And so when you look at it, it's just a much nicer, more dynamic looking sketch. And that's the way that I like to think about things. I always like to have something very close and other things very far away. And I try to push that limit about as much as I can in my drawings. It's a lot of fun to do it that way. I'm sketching very lightly here. Hopefully this is all showing up on the camera, but I'm sketching extremely lightly with a pencil called Mephisto. I used to be an animator in the mid-90s, and I had the opportunity to draw and bring to life many, many great animated characters. And it was just a huge honor to get to work on some of the ones that I got to work on. If you're interested in finding out some of the stuff that I've done, please check my website. It's toddaaronsmith.com. My full name, toddaaronsmith.com. And I have a lot of that kind of information online if you're interested. But anyway, I used to make appearances at these comic book sci-fi conventions that they have in many cities across the country. And at those conventions, I would sit and draw the characters that I've worked on all weekend. And I think the idea behind that is that if you go to one of these things, you can get a sketch from one of the artists who actually worked on characters that you like the best. And so I would sit there and just draw sketch after sketch after sketch of characters that I had worked on for people. They come up to my table and want me to draw that for them, so I do that. And if you haven't been to one of those conventions, they're always in a big, big venue. There are many artists and writers that are there. They usually have a number of celebrities that you can meet. And it's really something. If you like people watching, that's the kind of place for you. It's because you'll get to see all kinds of different personalities and people there. It's a lot of fun to sit there and watch all those people and just see what people are doing. A lot of them are in costume, and it's a lot of fun to get to watch them. Well, anyway, so I'm an artist there, and one year, the neighbor that I had, the gentleman that was right directly beside my table, was a highly respected, well-known artist that a lot of people in that comic book circle know. They all know who he is, and they know the work that he's done. And I've known him for a long time, and I was very fortunate to get to be his neighbor one year. And I was sitting there watching him draw, and he was sitting there watching me draw. And at some point after drawing for a long time, I had to sharpen my pencil. And he said to me, "Hey, why don't you use a mechanical pencil when you're drawing like I do?" And what he does is he sketches very lightly with his mechanical pencil, and then he goes back over it in either darker pencil, or he inks it, or he puts color over top of it, or whatever it is. He puts down the base sketch with his mechanical pencil. And I said, well, I'm used to doing animation where we use soft pencils, and I just really enjoy the soft feel of a pencil going across the paper, and I'm just used to that, and I just like it a lot better. But I thought about it for a long time, and I finally went out and bought myself a package of mechanical pencils, and I went home and I started drawing with them, and to tell you the truth, they were just basically junk. They were plastic, and the lead moved on them. They felt really cheap in my hand. I felt like I could probably break one of them just by squeezing it, and it was not a very good experience buying those mechanical pencils. So then I went and bought a super expensive one. But I tried that one, and I just didn't feel good about drawing with it. I felt like I was trying to draw with a broom handle or something. It just wasn't good, but it was an expensive one. So I kind of gave up on that. But later, somebody gave me this Mephisto pencil. It's made by Koh-I-Noor, the Koh-I-Noor company. They make a lot of really wonderful art supplies. And he gave it to me, so I used it. And boy, right after I used it the very first time, I said, whoever created this pencil either was or is an artist, whoever that was. They understood what it was like to need good art supplies like this. So I've been using it ever since. I've drawn with number 2 pencils, various art supplies, and even ballpoint pens. I've drawn with just about everything you can draw with. But until I used this Mephisto pencil, I would have never believed what a difference quality art supplies can make in drawings. And they really do. They make a big difference. Now, I'm not saying that you can't make really good art with all of those other things. I've seen ballpoint pen drawings that were just amazing that I don't even know how they did that. It was so good. And so you can certainly be a good artist with just about any pencil or pen or whatever you're using. But as someone who has been working as a professional artist for many, many years, I can tell you that quality art supplies really do make a difference. There's quite a difference in using office supplies and using art supplies that are made by a company who cares about making good art supplies. So that is the reason that I use this Mephisto pencil. I've been using it for a long time, and I don't ever want to use another one. I just love it. I'm drawing trees right now, as you've noticed as I'm going along here. Trees are a wonderful thing to draw. As a matter of fact, they're maybe my favorite thing to draw. They are just handled as a shape. That's how you draw a tree. It's just a texture drawn as a shape. It's a little bit like how you draw hair. It's just, when you draw hair, it's just a shape. I don't do animation anymore. I draw baseball cards. I work for one of the bigger baseball card companies in the country, and so I get to do a lot of the artwork on baseball cards. And a lot of the ball players that I have to draw have, a variety of different kinds of hair. Some of them have really long hair, or they have big beards or big mustaches or whatever. And I have to draw that as a shape. I handle their hair as if it's a texture, not individual strands. If you draw individual hair strands, it almost looks like the person has spaghetti on their head or some weird thing like that, and it just doesn't look right. So you have to kind of handle it as a shape or as a texture, and that's the way that I do hair. But trees are exactly the same way, and grass is the exact same way too. So it's just a texture, and you can scribble back and forth and just kind of let your mind go and just do whatever you feel like doing with that. And it's just a great feeling to get to draw those trees. As I'm going here, I'm kind of fine-tuning some of the stuff that I put down in the first place, making it a little bit darker as things are closer to us in the picture. And of course, you can see back in the background, they're lighter. And I'm going to adjust all of those things as we go here too. Mountains would be the same way. The mountains, of course, are quite a distance away from us. And so I'm going to keep those nice and light, but I'll show you what we're going to do with those as we go. A lot of artists say, I couldn't draw a straight line. I hear that all the time. People that are not artists will look at my drawings and they say things like, oh, I can't even draw a straight line. And I don't know if you're seeing what I'm drawing right now, but there are no straight lines. Even though railroad tracks are pretty much nothing but straight lines, you've got these railroad ties that tie the rails together. The rails themselves are parallel with each other, so they're straight lines. But so far I haven't drawn a single straight line, but I'm still drawing the railroad tracks. And you can see how I'm doing it here. I'm just working the lines back and forth, and none of them are straight lines. They're just little scribble marks, and I'm working very quickly and trying to get those lines straight. I think the trick to drawing anything realistically is shadows and highlights. If you want to draw something that is going to look like it has a 3D form to it, shadows and highlights are the way to do that. And just about every artist that I've ever heard speak about it has said that very thing. If you put shadows down and highlights, it gives your shapes that you're drawing a lot of form, and they look like an object sitting there in a 3D plane rather than just a flat cutout shape that you've put down on your paper. You may have noticed a few things as I've been drawing here. First, I've hardly stopped moving this pencil at all. I continue to keep moving and drawing and sketching, and I just haven't stopped, and I'm drawing very, very quickly. I'm not thinking much about it. I'm just going, 100 miles an hour on this pencil. I'm just drawing as quickly as I can. There are times that I will sit back and just look over the sketch that I'm doing and give it a lot of thought and then continue drawing it. But often I just constantly draw and let my mind wander, and whatever comes out of the pencil is what comes out of the pencil. I love doing it both ways. It's all in what makes you happy. Both ways make me happy. I do it different ways each time. But this time I'm just kind of sketching and drawing, and as my eye sees something that needs to be touched up, like this tree that I'm doing right now, I'll just go right up to it and just continue scribbling away on that thing. I've made a kind of a base of the tree. It's just really a line, and then I make these branches that go off of the tree on both sides. But notice I'm not making them the same. I'm not trying to measure anything. I'm just scribbling away and just doing whatever I feel like doing. That's what the fun of this kind of drawing is. It's whatever makes you happy, and it makes me very happy to get to just scribble back and forth and create something. The other thing that you may have noticed is that I hardly ever use an eraser when I'm making this kind of a sketch. And that isn't to say that I don't make mistakes. I make lots of mistakes. I've already made mistakes within this very drawing that I'm drawing right now. For instance, at the very beginning, when I was just first laying down where I wanted everything to be, I drew these tracks, and the rail on the right side, I made it way, way thicker than I wanted it to be as it went into the distance. But I just kept going on it and just made the correct line that I thought would look better. And as I continued drawing, since that was such a light line, I knew that it would be covered over later, so I wasn't worried about it. I just kept drawing, and so I do make a lot of mistakes when I'm drawing, but really, when you are drawing from lighter to darker, and you're just constantly drawing and correcting things as you go right there on the page, they're not actually mistakes. It's hard to make a real mistake because I'm just drawing for fun, and I keep working on it and adding details as I go, and nobody's going to notice those mistakes. You don't even have to show your drawings to anybody. Nobody will see it if you don't want them to see it. You just do it for yourself, and you do it because it's fun. You draw for you, and if it isn't something fun, then really you should probably do something else. But I just love drawing and sketching, and I think here in these mountains as I go, I'm going to go ahead and make a few places where there's shadow within the mountains. Up till now, I've just had that be a shape where I want that mountain to be, but now I'm starting to think about it a little bit more as I go, and I feel like there should be some big grooves and places where there's shadows, and also as I'm working on this, I want to start with the shading from the top and go down and get a little bit lighter as I go from the top. And the reason I do that is because I feel like if you do it that way, if you make your shadows a little bit darker at the top on your mountains in the background, by the time you're getting to the lower parts of where that shadow is, it almost gives the illusion that there's mist or fog or something in the background, and that the mountain tops are kind of stretching up out of that mist, and it's just a beautiful effect. I think it looks really nice when you finish it that way, and so that's the way that I continue to do it. But anyway, sketching is supposed to be enjoyable, and why would you do it at all if it's not enjoyable to you? The nice thing about sketching, too, is you can do it anywhere. I don't watch an awful lot of TV, but sometimes I'll have on a ball game, and I'll have my sketchbook out too, and I'll sit there and sketch things while I'm listening to the ball game. You can take your sketchbook anywhere with you, and you should take your sketchbook anywhere. And what you'll be surprised by is the number of opportunities that you will have to open it and make sketches. I take mine around with me everywhere, and I'm always finding times when I can just open it and make a little sketch. A lot of times I'll sit there and just draw a bunch of trees. It's really not much more than doodling, but I'll sit there and doodle these trees, and I'll draw some in the foreground and some in the background, and it's just the way that I keep doing that. There's all kinds of different things that you can doodle, but trees to me seems like a lot of fun. And I'll tell you something else that's great about sketching is you just make it up as you go. I'm creating this world that I'm doing right now. I don't have a photo of this place or anything like that. It doesn't even exist. I just made it up. It's my world, and I'm making it whatever I want it to be. If I want some trees on one side and nothing on the other, that's what I'll do. I just make it up, and I have a lot of fun doing that. If I want a tunnel at the end of the tracks, I'll put one there. If I want there to be birds up in the sky, I'll put birds up in the sky. You can escape the real world and make your own world, and that's what's great about drawing. I'm going to go ahead and switch pencils here, and I'm going to go to a woodless graphite pencil. I was skeptical when I had first heard about this. I said, a woodless graphite? What is a woodless graphite, and why would I need it? I said that right up until the time that I actually used one myself. The balance of this pencil and the weight of it in my hand just feels amazing. I never have to sharpen this pencil, hardly ever, because it kind of sharpens itself as it goes. It's all just a big stick of graphite, and it gives me a wonderful, wonderful dark color. And it comes in different weights, and when I say weights, I'm not talking about how heavy it is. I'm talking about the darkness or lightness that you use or that you get when you're using it. This one in particular that I'm using is a 4B, but there are several others. You can get it in 2B, 6B, 8B, and I know there's others, but I've got a 4B right here. So, and what you may notice about this woodless graphite is that I'm not going over every line that I've drawn already. I'm just filling in some of the darker areas, just going over those to make them more dark. So a lot of people, when they're making drawings, they get to a certain place in their drawing, and they stop, and they call it done. But I really feel like a lot of times if they would just go a little bit further with their drawings and make more shadows or pull out the highlights a little more, that they would have a superior drawing to what they were doing in the first place. I really think that. And this woodless graphite pencil, after using the Mephisto pencil, is just a fantastic way to really punch out those shadows and just make the whole thing far better than what it would have been had I just stopped right then. And you'll see that as I get towards the end of this drawing. It's going to look a lot better as we get towards the end. I mentioned before to you that I drew baseball cards, and the company that I work for has art directors and deadlines associated with making these baseball cards. And the cards that I draw have to look like the players. I mean, they must look like the players that I'm working on, because these are real guys and I have to draw them. And that is not easy to do. I mostly draw current players, guys playing right now, but I've had the honor of drawing some of the greatest ball players to ever put on a uniform and play ball. I've drawn Babe Ruth, for instance. I've drawn Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Satchel Paige, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, all these guys that are considered the greatest baseball players. I've had the opportunity to draw them on baseball cards, and it's just a giant honor to get to do that. So anyway, whoever it is that I'm drawing, whether it's a current guy or one of these Hall of Famers, they have to resemble the guy that I'm drawing. The drawings that I make of these guys have to be approved by an art director, and they also need to be approved by Major League Baseball Players Association. So again, it is not easy. There's a lot of eyes on it that demand that I do it right. So I really have to concentrate on that, and I have deadlines, so I have to work very hard on it to meet those deadlines. Sometimes the deadlines are very short, and I have to work long nights to get a lot of these cards done. But the sketch that I'm making right now is only for me. There's no deadline. There's no art director that'll ever look at it. It's just me creating it. And maybe I'll show it to other people. Maybe I won't. That's up to me entirely. But being creative, like we're doing in this sketching here, is something I feel like everybody ought to do. So here we go back with some of these trees again. I'm just getting through some of them and highlighting some of my shadows, pulling these trees a little bit further towards us. You may notice those trees that look like they're near the end of the track, way off in the distance, the small ones there in the middle. I started, basically what I did in the mountains too, is I started darker on the top of them, and as I worked my way down the tree, it got lighter and lighter and lighter, showing that there might be mist down there, or fog, or maybe a train has just gone by and kicked up a bunch of dust, and that dust is still settling down the track. Maybe that's what it is. It's whatever I want to make up, but I feel like that's a good way of drawing these trees, just back and forth, side to side. I don't, like I said, I don't measure any of this stuff. I try not to make any branches on any side match any other branches that are on the other side. Just keep right on going with it, making grass, high grass, and texture, and there's rocks that are between the railroad ties, and I just make those look like a texture, and then they look very much like they are tree branches. So I'm getting towards the end of this drawing, and of course I have everything where I pretty well want it. Let's do the mountain up here a little bit darker on the shadows of the top to punch that out a little bit further. Maybe my shadows are a little bit too uniform as they go down the side of the mountain. So I'm going to start from the top, put a little bit more graphite down on them, and make it go lighter as I go down towards the bottom. Yeah, that looks about right to me. You can do a sky if you feel like doing a sky. If I had a lot more time with this drawing, I would probably put down a nice layer of graphite and then smooth it all out with either a paper towel or a finger or whatever, and just make it a nice, consistent tone across the sky. But for now, I'm just going to leave the sky loose and sketchy as is, I think. So being creative, like we are doing by sketching, is something that I think everybody should do. I feel like it is one of those things that's right with the world. We live in such a beautiful, magnificent place, and there are so many wonderful things. Certainly not everything is right with the world, but the things that are not right, I think, make us appreciate those things that are. That's what I like to think about anyway, the things that are beautiful. When I sketch, I'm focusing on the things that are right with the world, and I hope you do too. All right, this drawing is pretty well done, and I think I'll move on to another one. Hey, let me show you my new sketch pad. This one has a special feature to it that I never even imagined. The way that these pages are cut, let me show you this. Let me pull my sketch off. And again, this is my brand new drawing pad. But see the way that these pages are cut on the top? This shape allows me to put my drawing back in the drawing pad after I've drawn on it. And I can take it out and put it back in and take it out and put it back in. But that's the way that that works. And then it's completely as if I never took it out of the sketchbook in the first place. And I can make the entire pad be a portfolio of my best drawings. So I can either leave out the ones that I don't want in, or I can just keep them in there. And then when I'm done sketching, I just put the page back in the sketch pad if I want, and it's in its own portfolio. It was one of those things that I was skeptical about until I used it for myself, but now I can't live without it. I take it everywhere I go and I draw with it all the time. So that's how to make this sketch. As I mentioned before, there is nothing about this drawing that you can't do yourself. You may be even able to do it better than I did. I used some nice art supplies to make my sketches shine the way that I want them to, and you can do that too. I used a couple of different pencils to make my drawings in my sketchbook because I like the effect that I can create using lighter and heavier leads. You don't have to do it exactly the way that I did. Sketch however you feel comfortable and draw whatever you like. Draw because you love to draw. There is no limit to what you can do because you are an artist. See you next time.